The air in the Galactic Nova Liaison School's gymnasium hummed with anticipation and fear. Students from a dozen different star systems huddled together, their bodies, some scaled, some gelatinous, some insectoid, pressed against the far walls of the massive training facility. The weekly physical training hour was about to begin, but today was different. The whispers had been circulating since morning. A Deathworlder had enrolled. Ulrich Vator stood at the entrance, his massive frame blocking much of the doorway. At 2.1 meters tall, his muscular body resembled living steel more than flesh. His rough, radiation-absorbing skin had a grayish hue that contrasted with the brilliant blue glow of his eyes. As he stepped into the gymnasium, the metallic flooring subtly vibrated with each footfall, sending ripples of tension through the gathered xenomorphs. "Stay back," a small, insect-like student whispered to its companions. "Deathworlders will tear you apart in seconds." Physical training instructor Ron, a veteran combat specialist with 4 upper limbs and scaled skin, observed the newcomer with practiced caution. In all her years teaching at the academy, she'd never instructed a student from Nox 9, a planet infamous for its gamma radiation, crushing pressure, and acid storms that would dissolve most species in seconds. "Ulrich Vator," she called, her voice cutting through the nervous murmurs. "You will demonstrate your capabilities on the skill-climbing wall. It has been calibrated to replicate the volcanic terrain of your home planet." The students parted like a tide as Ulrich moved forward, his eyes methodically scanning the facility, always alert as if assessing for threats. It was the gaze of someone who had grown up needing to detect danger before it struck. A survival instinct deeply embedded in Deathworlders that made other species profoundly uncomfortable. At the center of the gymnasium towered an 8-meter wall coated in a synthetic material mimicking volcanic rock. The structure was part of the Academy's adaptive training equipment, designed to challenge the diverse physiologies of its interstellar student body. A spider-like creature with a chitinous exoskeleton stepped forward from a group of onlookers. His multiple eyes glowed with malicious amusement. "Deathworlder, can you climb without falling and crushing us all beneath your bulk?" the student sneered, his mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among his kind. Ulrich recognized him as Ixar Kell, a Mirios native whose species was known for their territorial aggression and social hierarchy based on physical dominance. Since orientation day, Ixar had appointed himself as the unofficial spokesperson for the class's anti-Deathworlder sentiment. Ulrich said nothing. Words were often wasted in his experience. On Nox 9, action determined survival. He approached the wall, feeling the eyes of every student boring into his back. This wasn't just about completing a physical task. It was about proving he wasn't the monster they believed him to be. The instructor's voice rang out again. "Your previous class record is 47 seconds. Begin when ready." Ulrich placed his hands on the coarse surface, feeling the familiar texture, similar to the cliffs he'd scaled as a child to escape the seasonal acid floods. With a fluid motion that belied his size, he launched himself upward, his powerful muscles propelling him with precision and control. His fingers found invisible holds, his legs braced against microscopic protrusions that others couldn't even detect. The entire class collectively stepped back, astonished by the speed and grace with which the enormous Deathworlder ascended. What should have been a laborious climb looked effortless, as if gravity held lesser dominion over him. 30 seconds later, Ulrich reached the top, touched the sensor pad, and descended with the same controlled power, landing with barely a sound. He straightened and faced the instructor. 30 seconds exactly, Ron announced, unable to hide her surprise. "You've broken the record by 17 seconds. A mixture of fear and reluctant admiration rippled through the watching students. A reptilian student with metallic scales, Krinax Serio from Terra Gamma, observed with particular interest, his head tilted in curiosity rather than fear. Next, the instructor continued, the radiation endurance chamber, This test simulates gamma radiation exposure at level 3 intensity. Murmurs erupted again. Level 3 radiation was uncomfortable for most species and dangerous to many. The chamber was a transparent pod in the corner of the gymnasium, designed to measure adaptation to hazardous environments. Ulrich entered without hesitation, the door sealing behind him. As the radiation levels rose, indicated by the changing colors inside the chamber, the students watched in horrified fascination. Most species could withstand perhaps 2 minutes at this intensity before the simulation would automatically terminate. Yet, as the minutes ticked by, Ulrich stood motionless, his body seemingly absorbing the radiation. At the 5-minute mark, a faint blue glow began to emanate from his skin, his body's natural mechanism for processing and neutralizing radiation. By the 10-minute mark, when the test concluded, several students had backed away from the viewing area, and one had even fled the gymnasium entirely. When Ulrich emerged, trails of blue energy briefly rippled across his skin before dissipating. The effect was both beautiful and terrifying to the watching students. "He's radioactive!" a voice cried out. "Silence," Instructor Ron commanded. "Ulrich's physiology processes radiation differently than yours. He poses no contamination risk." But the damage was done. The already wide space around Ulrich had doubled in size as students retreated further. Ixarkel moved forward again, his 8 legs clicking against the floor. Unlike the others, he approached Ulrich directly, invading the empty space around the Deathworlder. "If you're so capable, Deathworlder, perhaps you should prove yourself in direct combat. Show us who you really are," he challenged, his voice carrying to every corner of the gymnasium. Instructor Rain stepped forward. "Ixar, this is not—" "I accept," Ulrich interrupted, his deep voice surprising those who had never heard him speak. "Training parameters only. No actual harm." The instructor hesitated, then nodded. "Simulation parameters engaged. First to 3 scoring touches wins." A section of the floor illuminated, creating a circular arena. Both students took positions at opposite sides. Ixar moved first, his 8 limbs giving him extraordinary speed and agility. He circled Ulrich, looking for an opening, then suddenly lashed out with 2 limbs aimed at the Deathworlder's chest. Ulrich sidestepped with surprising quickness for his size. His movements were economical, no wasted energy, no flourish. He caught one of Ixar's striking limbs and used the spider-like student's momentum to throw him off balance. "First point to Ulrich," the instructor called. Ixar hissed in frustration and attacked again, this time feinting left before striking from the right. Ulrich blocked the blow, but miscalculated the reach of Ixar's secondary limbs, which scored a touch on his shoulder. "Point to Ixar, 1-all." The spider-like student grew more confident, his movements becoming elaborate as he played to the audience. "See how slow they are," he called out. "Deathworlders are just brutes with no technique." Something flickered in Ulrich's eyes, a brief flash of the predatory instinct his species had evolved over countless generations of survival on Nox 9. When Ixar attacked again, Ulrich didn't just block or evade. He counterattacked with such explosive speed that many students didn't even see him move. One moment Ixar was advancing. The next, he was on his back, with Ulrich's hand positioned precisely above his central thorax. A killing strike held in perfect control, just millimeters from contact. "Point to Ulrich," the instructor said quietly. When Ixar rose, the bravado had vanished from his posture. He attacked desperately, throwing himself at Ulrich with all 8 limbs engaged. Ulrich caught him in midair, redirected his momentum, and placed him firmly, but carefully, on the ground. One hand again positioned for a final strike. "Match to Ulrich, 3-1, Ron announced. The gymnasium had fallen completely silent. The students had expected violence, had perhaps even wanted to see the Deathworlder expose his true savage nature. Instead, they had witnessed precision, control, and most surprisingly, restraint. Ulrich extended a hand to help Igzar up, a human gesture of sportsmanship that the spider-like student did not understand. After a moment's confusion, Igzar pushed himself up with his own limbs, his compound eyes fixed on Ulrich with a mixture of resentment and something new, respect. "Class dismissed," Instructor Rain announced. Ulrich remained behind for a moment. As the students filed out, many casting backward glances at the Deathworlder, Krynak's Serio lingered, his metallic scales catching the light. Finally, when only he, Ulrich, and the instructor remained, he approached. "That was impressive," he said, his reptilian mouth forming the words carefully. "I've never seen anyone move like that." Ulrich nodded acknowledgement. Would you like to join some of us for the midday meal?" Krynax asked, his tail swishing nervously. "I'd be interested to learn about survival techniques on Nox 9. It was the first genuine overture of friendship Ulrich had received since arriving at the academy. He felt a momentary tightness in his chest, an emotional response that would have been dangerous to display on his homeworld, but could perhaps be permitted here. "I would like that," he said simply. As Krynax left, Instructor Rain approached Ulrich. "You showed excellent control today," she said, "but not everyone will be as quick to accept you as Krynax. There is a long history of fear regarding Deathworlders in the galactic community." "I understand," Ulrich replied. "On Nox 9, we learn early that fear is often a reasonable response to danger. I do not blame them." "Your goal is to join the Dawn team, correct?" the instructor asked, referring to the elite student group that received specialized training. Ulrich nodded. "It would allow me to demonstrate that Deathworlders can contribute more than just combat skills to the galactic community. Then you must not only prove your physical capabilities, but also your ability to integrate with the team. I'll be watching your progress closely." As Ulrich left the gymnasium, he contemplated the paradox of his situation. The very adaptations that had allowed his species to survive on Nox 9, strength, speed, radiation resistance, made him an object of fear here. Yet to fulfill his goal of joining the Dawn team, he needed to find a balance between utilizing those abilities and reassuring others that he was not a threat. In the corridor outside, he caught his reflection in a polished surface. The massive frame, the thick, radiation-resistant skin. The eyes evolved to see through acid fog, all markers of a Deathworlder. All reasons for others to keep their distance. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Ulrich allowed himself to feel the weight of isolation. On Nox 9, solitude was often necessary for survival. Here, among the stars, it was a barrier to the very future he sought. The dining hall buzzed with conversation when Ulrich entered, but a wave of silence spread outward from the doorway as students noticed his presence. Trays clattered as some hastily relocated to tables further away. Krynax waved from a table near the center of the hall, where he sat with a semi-translucent, purple-hued aquatic being. Ulrich recognized her as Lyra Veen, an Oceania Delta native whose species could regenerate energy and heal rapidly. As Ulrich approached, the conversations around them resumed, though noticeably hushed and interspersed with furtive glances. "This is Lyra," Krynax said as Ulrich placed his tray, loaded with 3 times the standard protein portion, on the table. "She's in our xenobiology class." "I've never met a Deathworlder before," Lyra said, her voice melodic with an undercurrent that reminded Ulrich of flowing water. "Is it true that you can survive direct gamma exposure without protection?" "For limited durations," Ulrich replied, careful to keep his voice low and non-threatening. "Our bodies process radiation differently. It's necessary on Nox 9, where surface exposure occurs daily." "Fascinating." Lyra's translucent skin rippled with interest. "Our professors speak of Deathworlder physiology, but it's different seeing it firsthand." "They speak of us as curiosities or threats?" Ulrich asked, already knowing the answer. Krynax and Lyra exchanged glances. Both, Krynax admitted. The standard protocol is observe but don't engage. But that seems prejudiced after watching you today. Ulrich nodded, taking a bite of his protein concentrate. On Nox 9 we have a saying, judge by actions, not origins. Even among Deathworlders, there are those who use strength wisely, and those who abuse it. What's it like there? Lyra asked. On your world? For the first time since arriving at the academy, Ulrich found himself opening up. He described the acid storms that swept across Nox 9's surface every 60 days, forcing inhabitants to seek shelter in volcanic cave systems. He explained how children learned to identify safe food sources by the specific way certain minerals crystallized under radiation exposure. We don't have schools like this, he explained. Training is survival-based and conducted in family units. This is very different. Is that why you came here? Krynax asked. To experience something different? Ulrich considered the question. Partly, but also to show that Deathworlders can contribute to galactic society beyond our physical capabilities. We are not just weapons to be feared or utilized. As they talked, Ulrich noticed Ixar Kell enter the dining hall with his usual group of followers. The spider-like student noticed him immediately, 8 eyes narrowing. Instead of approaching, however, Ixar chose a table far across the room, occasionally glancing in their direction. You've made quite an impression on Ixar, Lyra observed, following Ulrich's gaze. He's used to intimidating others with his combat skills. I did not intend to humiliate him, Ulrich said, only to defend myself. That's exactly why it affected him so strongly, Krynax explained. You could have hurt him, but you chose not to. It confused him. When the meal ended, Lyra made an unexpected suggestion. A few of us meet to study xenophysiology together after classes. Would you join us? We could all learn from each other's biological adaptations. The invitation surprised Ulrich. Your other study partners would be comfortable with a Deathworlder present? I'll make sure they understand you're there to share knowledge, not, well, you know. Lyra's skin flushed a deeper purple with embarrassment. Not to tear anyone apart, Ulrich finished, his tone lightening slightly. I appreciate the invitation. I'll come. As the three parted ways, Ulrich felt a subtle shift in his perspective. The academy still viewed him with fear. But now, there existed a small space where he might be seen first as Ulrich, and only second as a Deathworlder. That evening, rumors spread rapidly through the student dormitories. The Deathworlder broke records in physical training. He can absorb radiation. He defeated Ixar Kell in combat without even trying. Each retelling grew more exaggerated, until by morning, half the student body was convinced that Ulrich could tear through bulkheads with his bare hands, and was secretly radioactive enough to contaminate anyone who came too close. When Ulrich arrived for the next physical training session, he found the class size had shrunk by a third. Those who remained pressed themselves against the walls, leaving the center of the gymnasium conspicuously empty. Instructor Rihan pulled him aside before the session began. The Academy Council has expressed concerns about potential incidents, she said quietly. I've been instructed to conduct separate training for you with a smaller group of volunteers. They fear I will injure someone, Ulrich stated flatly. They fear what they don't understand, the instructor corrected. It's not personal. Ulrich, it's institutional caution. And the Dawn team selection? Will I still be considered if I train separately? Rain hesitated. That complicates matters. The Dawn team requires group cohesion above all else. Training in isolation would not demonstrate that quality. Ulrich felt a tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with the Academy's higher oxygen content. What do you suggest? We'll conduct a special session with you and a few volunteers who are willing to train alongside you. If that goes well, we can gradually reintegrate you into the main class. And who would volunteer to train with a Deathworlder? Ulrich asked, already suspecting the answer would be no one. To his surprise, Krynax and Lyra had already stepped forward. Even more unexpectedly, they were joined by a small, insect-like student that Ulrich recognized as Finks, the youngest in their class. "I'll try," Finks said, his voice barely audible, antennae quivering with what might have been fear or excitement. If you promise to be careful." The simple trust in that statement affected Ulrich more deeply than he expected. On Nox 9, trust was rarely given and hard-earned. Here was this small creature, visibly terrified yet willing to try. "I promise," Ulrich said solemnly. The special training session became a turning point, with just 4 students. Instructor Rain was able to design exercises that showcased how different physiologies could complement each other. Krynax's armored resilience, Lyra's energy manipulation, Finks's agility, and Ulrich's raw power combined in ways that surprised even the instructor. By the session's end, even Finks had relaxed enough to directly address Ulrich without stammering. "You're not as scary when we're working together," the small insectoid admitted. The statement, simple as it was, crystallized something for Ulrich. Fear came from the unknown, from distance. Collaboration brought understanding. Over the next 2 weeks, their special training group expanded to include 7, then 12 students. Each newcomer arrived with trepidation, but left with a new perspective on what a Deathworlder could be. Not just a creature of terrifying strength, but a potential ally. Ixar Kell remained conspicuously absent from these sessions, though Ulrich occasionally noticed him observing from doorways or adjacent training areas. His multiple eyes narrowed in what might have been calculation or lingering resentment. Then came the announcement that would change everything. The Academy was organizing the Interspecies Physical Aptitude Competition, a mandatory team event with randomly assigned groups. When the team rosters appeared on the communication terminals, Ulrich found himself assigned to Team 7, alongside Krynax, 2 students he barely knew, and Ixar Kell. "This will be interesting," Krynax commented when they compared assignments. "Ixar hasn't spoken a word to you since the combat demonstration." "He will either adapt or fail," Ulrich replied pragmatically. On Nox 9, those unable to cooperate with their shelter group during acid storms do not survive long. The competition consisted of 3 main events: pneumatic endurance running, simulated team combat, and energy tether pull. Each was designed to test different aspects of physical capability and, crucially, team coordination. Team 7's first practice session was tense. Ixar arrived late, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming as if freshly polished for the occasion. "Let's establish parameters," he said immediately, addressing the team but pointedly avoiding eye contact with Ulrich. "I have the most combat experience, so I should lead the simulated combat portion. The Deathworlder obviously takes point on the endurance run and tether pull." "My name is Ulrich," the Deathworlder said quietly. Ixar's multiple eyes swiveled to face him. "What?" "If we are to function as a team, use my name, not the Deathworlder." A tense silence followed. The other team members, Krynax and 2 students named Zephyr and Talek, watched the exchange carefully. Finally, Ixar's mandibles clicked in what might have been acquiescence. "Fine. Ulrich takes point on endurance events. I lead combat. Agreed?" It wasn't friendship or even respect, but it was a beginning. The team began to train, awkwardly at first, then with increasing coordination as they discovered each member's strengths and weaknesses. In the pneumatic endurance running event, they would need to navigate a pressurized track with various atmosphere density challenges. Ulrich's Nox 9 physiology made him nearly immune to pressure changes, while Ixar struggled in high-pressure zones, but excelled in low-gravity segments. "You take lead through sections 3 and 5, Ulrich suggested during practice. "I'll anchor sections 1, 2, and 4, where the pressure peaks." Ixar seemed surprised by the tactical suggestion, but nodded after analyzing the course layout. "Logical, Zephyr and Talik handle the transition zones with Krinax as the stabilizer. By their third practice, they had developed a rhythm, each member compensating for the other's limitations. Even Ixar had begun to address Alric by name, though always with a certain stiffness. The real breakthrough came during their simulated combat practice. The event used harmless energy weapons that registered hits on opponents without causing actual damage. Teams would compete to capture and hold strategic points on a dynamically changing battlefield. During one particularly intense practice round, Ixar found himself cornered by two practice drones. Alric, seeing the situation, moved with characteristic Deathworlder speed to intercept, drawing fire away from his teammate. "I had that under control," Ixar snapped after the exercise. "You were outnumbered and outpositioned," Alric replied calmly. "On Nox 9, pride does not keep you alive. Cooperation does." Something shifted in Ixar's demeanor. "Your world sounds challenging." "It is, as is yours, in different ways. Mirios has gravity fluctuations that would crush most species, does it not?" Ixar seemed surprised that Alric knew this detail about his homeworld. "Yes, our exoskeletons evolved to withstand sudden gravitational shifts." "Different challenges, similar outcomes," Alric observed. "Adaptation for survival." It wasn't friendship, but it was a recognition of common ground, literally, in the sense that both came from worlds that most species would consider hostile. As the competition approached, rumors again circulated through the academy, but with a different tone. Students who had observed Team 7's practices spoke of their unexpected coordination. The phrase, "even with a Deathworlder," had subtly shifted to, "especially with the Deathworlder." The day before the competition, Instructor Rain called Alric to her office. "Your team has made remarkable progress," she said. "But tomorrow will be the real test, not just of physical capability, but of perception." "You mean how others see Deathworlders?" Alric stated. "Yes. The Academy Council will be observing. Several are concerned about having Deathworlder students at all. Your performance could influence future admission policies." Alric felt the weight of this responsibility settle on his shoulders. "I understand. Remember your goal, Alric. The Dawn Team Selection Committee will also be watching. Show them not just your strength, but your judgment." The competition arena was filled to capacity when Team 7 took their positions the next day. The pneumatic track gleamed under the artificial lighting, pressure gates visible at intervals along its length. Combat simulation zones had been established in the center, their boundaries marked by flickering energy fields. The energy tether pull area dominated the far end, a massive crystalline cable suspended between anchor points. Team 7 would compete against 5 other teams, each representing different combinations of species and abilities. The stakes were high: Academy prestige, potential Dawn Team selection, and for Alric, the chance to change perceptions about Deathworlders. The pneumatic endurance running event began with a thunderous hiss as the pressure systems activated. As planned, Alric took the lead through the high-pressure zones, his Nox 9 physiology barely registering what would incapacitate many other species. When they reached the gravitational variation section, he seamlessly handed the lead to Ixar, who navigated the fluctuations with 8-legged precision. Their transitions were smooth, practiced, a testament to the hours they'd spent learning each other's capabilities. They finished second among the 6 teams, a strong showing that earned appreciative murmurs from the audience. "Not bad," Ixar acknowledged as they prepared for the next event. "Your bulk moves faster than it looks." Coming from Ixar, this qualified as high praise. The simulated team combat event proved more challenging. Each team member wore sensors that registered damage from the harmless energy weapons. Elimination occurred when a student's damage threshold was exceeded. Team 7 moved through the simulated battlefield with growing confidence, capturing 2 strategic points before encountering heavy resistance from Team 3. In the chaos of simulated explosions and shifting terrain, Ulrich lost sight of Ixar momentarily. When he located his teammate again, Ixar was cornered, his damage sensors already registering at 70%. Without hesitation, Ulrich moved to assist, drawing fire from 3 opponents simultaneously. His greater mass and Deathworlder resilience allowed him to absorb hits that would have eliminated others. But even he had limits. By the time he reached Ixar, his own damage indicator flashed warning signals. "Fall back," he told Ixar. "I'll cover." Ixar hesitated. "You're at critical damage levels yourself." "I can endure more than the sensors are calibrated to register," Ulrich replied. "Deathworlder physiology." In that moment, something changed in Ixar's posture. Instead of retreating, he moved to Ulrich's side. "Then we endure together. Team tactics. Position 5. It was a formation they had practiced but never implemented. A defensive configuration that maximized coverage while minimizing exposure. With Ixar's 8 limbs providing rapid fire from multiple angles, and Ulrich's bulk serving as a mobile shield, they not only survived the encounter, but managed to eliminate 2 opponents. When a stray shot finally pushed Ulrich's damage sensors past threshold, triggering his elimination, he fell back in a controlled manner that allowed Ixar to continue the advance. Their coordinated effort helped Team 7 secure a narrow victory in the event. As they prepared for the final challenge, the energy tether pull, Ulrich noticed a shift in the audience's reaction. The fearful whispers had been replaced by excited commentary. Even students who had previously avoided him were watching with interest, rather than apprehension. The energy tether pull was brutally simple in concept. 2 teams grasped opposite ends of a crystalline energy cable and attempted to pull it across a center line. In practice, it required perfect coordination of strength, timing, and technique. Team 7 faced Team 2 in the final round, a group that included some of the Academy's strongest non-Deathworlder students. As they took positions around their end of the glowing cable, Ixar surprised everyone by suggesting a formation that placed Ulrich at the center rear, not at the front as expected. "Your strength is our anchor," he explained. "The rest of us establish the initial pull vector. Then, you provide the decisive force." It was a sophisticated strategy that recognized Ulrich's strength while integrating it into a team effort rather than relying on it exclusively. When the signal came, they executed the plan perfectly. The other team, expecting Ulrich to lead the pull, had positioned their strongest members to counter him directly. Instead, they found themselves pulled off balance by the unexpected configuration. When Ulrich finally applied his full strength from the anchor position, the effect was dramatic. The energy cable flared brilliantly as it moved steadily toward Team 7's side, finally crossing the center line to thunderous applause from the audience. They had won, not just the event, but the overall competition. As Team 7 stood on the winner's podium, Ulrich found himself in an unfamiliar position, the center of positive attention. Krinax beamed beside him, metallic scales gleaming with pride. Even Ixar seemed to stand taller, his usually aggressive posture relaxed. Instructor Rehan presented them with the victor's medallions personally. When she reached Ulrich, she paused. "You've shown them something important today," she said quietly. "Not just strength, but restraint. Not just power, but partnership." Ulrich accepted the medallion, aware of the hundreds of eyes watching him. In that moment, he realized he faced a choice: to embrace the fearsome image of the Deathworlder that kept others at a distance, or to use his strength to protect and connect. The answer seemed clear. The days following the competition brought noticeable changes to Ulrich's academy experience. Students who had previously scattered at his approach now watched with curiosity. Some even ventured greetings in passing. The corridor of empty space that had surrounded him since arrival gradually narrowed. Most surprising was Ixar's transformation. The spider-like student approached Ulrich during a study period, multiple eyes fixed on him with uncharacteristic directness. I misjudged you, Ixar said without preamble. I assumed Deathworlders were mindless brutes, useful only for their strength. Many make that assumption, Ulrich replied. It was incorrect. The admission seemed to cost Ixar some effort. He extended one of his forward limbs, upon which rested a small object, a team leader insignia. This should have been yours. You led us effectively, even when I resisted. Ulrich studied the insignia, but didn't take it. Leadership isn't about wearing symbols. It's about making decisions that protect the group. You did that in the combat simulation when you chose team tactics over retreat. Ixar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Perhaps we both have misconceptions to overcome. It wasn't quite friendship, but it was respect, hard-earned and genuine. Lyra and Krinax had been quick to capitalize on the team's victory, establishing what they called the Interspecies Synergy Club to continue the collaborative training approach. To Ulrich's surprise, the initial membership included students from 12 different species, including several who had been among the most vocal about Deathworlder dangers. During their first official meeting, Instructor Rain made an unexpected appearance. The Academy Council has been monitoring your progress, she informed Ulrich. They've asked me to offer you a special position, Special Force Guidance Mentor for junior students. They're no longer concerned about Deathworlder integration? Ulrich asked. Let's say their risk assessment has been updated. The instructor's scaled lips curved in what might have been a smile. Your performance in the competition demonstrated that Deathworlder abilities can be integrated into team dynamics without incident. And the Dawn team selection? The committee will make its final decisions at term's end, but I can tell you that your name is under serious consideration. The news should have brought immediate satisfaction. It represented progress toward his goal, proving that Deathworlders could contribute to galactic society beyond their physical capabilities. Yet, Ulrich found himself reflecting on how his priorities had shifted since arrival. Initially, selection to the Dawn team had been his primary objective, a tangible achievement to validate his presence at the Academy. Now, he found himself equally invested in the growth of the Interspecies Synergy Club and the gradual change in how his fellow students perceived Deathworlders. One afternoon, while demonstrating adaptive pressure techniques to a group of junior students, Ulrich noticed Finks watching from the sidelines. The small insectoid had grown noticeably more confident since their first training session together, though he still moved with characteristic caution. Would you help me demonstrate the next technique? Ulrich asked, gesturing for Finks to join him. To the surprise of many, Finks approached without hesitation. What should I do? He asked, looking up at the towering Deathworlder without the fear that had once been so evident. Just stand beside me, Ulrich instructed. I want to show how different body masses respond to pressure changes. As they demonstrated the technique, Ulrich couldn't help but notice the contrast between them, his massive Deathworlder frame and Finks's delicate insectoid form. And yet, they moved in coordinated harmony. It was a visual representation of everything he had been working toward. Thank you, Deathworlder, Finks said afterward, using the term not as a label of fear, but almost as a title of respect. Because of you, I feel more confident. The simple statement affected Ulrich deeply. On Nox 9, impact was measured in survival, in the ability to endure the next acid storm or radiation surge. Here, among the stars, impact could also be measured in changed perceptions and growing confidence. As the academic term progressed, the special training sessions that had once been necessary to accommodate fears about Deathworlder integration became unnecessary. Ulrich participated in regular physical training alongside students of all species, his presence no longer causing panic or evacuation. Ixar, who had once been his most vocal opponent, had developed into something of a reluctant ally. During one training session, the spider-like student even corrected another student who referred to Ulrich simply as the Deathworlder. His name is Alrik Vator, Ixar stated firmly, and he has earned the right to be addressed properly. The Interspecies Synergy Club continued to grow, eventually attracting the attention of other academies within the Galactic Nova network. Requests came in for Alrik and the other founding members to share their integration methodologies and training techniques. One evening, as Alrik was returning to his dormitory after an extended training session, he encountered Instructor Ran in the corridor. "The Dawn team selection results will be announced tomorrow," she informed him. "Whatever the outcome, you should know that your impact here has extended far beyond that single objective." "I've come to realize that," Alrik acknowledged. "The Academy Council is considering a new program, multi-species force integration, based largely on the model your club has developed. They would like you to serve as an advisor." Alrik absorbed this information. "And if other Deathworlders apply to the Academy, they would find a very different reception than you did," the instructor assured him. "Your presence has changed perspectives." "Alrik, not completely, and certainly not universally. Prejudice is rarely eradicated so easily, but enough to make a difference." That night, Alrik stood by the viewport in his reinforced dormitory room, gazing out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Nox 9, with its acid storms and crushing pressure, its gamma radiation and constant dangers. It had forged him into what he was, a Deathworlder. Yes, but also more than that. When the Dawn team selections were posted the next morning, Alrik found his name on the list. The accompanying notation read, "Selected for exceptional physical capabilities and demonstrated leadership in cross-species integration." As students gathered to view the results, Alrik found himself surrounded not by fearful space, but by congratulatory classmates. Krinax clapped him on the shoulder, metallic scales clinking against Alrik's tough skin. Lyra's translucent form pulsed with pleased purple hues. Even Ixar acknowledged the achievement with a respectful nod. "What's next for you?" Lyra asked. "Now that you've achieved your goal?" Alrik considered the question. "On Nox 9, survival is the primary objective. Here, I've learned there can be more. Contribution, connection, change." "So philosophical," Ixar commented, though without his former derision. "Deathworlders surprising us again." Later that day, as Alrik conducted a training session for the Interspecies Synergy Club, he noticed a small commotion at the gymnasium entrance. A young student had arrived, tall, heavily muscled, with the distinctive dense bone structure of another Deathworld species. The newcomer stood hesitantly at the threshold, clearly expecting the same fearful reception Alrik had once experienced. Instead, Fink scurried over to the entrance. "Are you from a Deathworld?" the small insectoid asked, antennae quivering with interest rather than fear. When the newcomer nodded cautiously, Finks turned and waved toward Alrik. "Come meet our Deathworlder mentor. He's teaching us survival techniques." As the young Deathworlder cautiously entered, students moved aside, not in fear, but to create a path. Alrik stepped forward to welcome them, recognizing in their posture the same wariness, the same readiness for rejection he had carried upon his own arrival. "Welcome," he said simply. "You'll find things different here than you might expect." The shift in the newcomer's expression was subtle, but unmistakable. The faintest relaxation of constantly tensed muscles, the slightest softening of a perpetually vigilant gaze. It was the look of someone who had prepared for battle, but found acceptance instead. In that moment, Alrik knew with certainty that his impact at the Academy would extend far beyond his own achievements. The path he had forged would make the journey easier for those who followed, not just Deathworlders, but any student who felt different, feared, or misunderstood. As the training session resumed, Alrik guided his diverse group of students through exercises designed to highlight how their different physiologies could complement each other. Strength supporting agility, resilience protecting vulnerability, differences becoming advantages when properly understood and integrated. Finks, now confidently demonstrating a technique to the newcomer, caught Alrik's eye and smiled in his species' distinctive way, mandibles spreading wide, antennae raised high. "Thank you, Deathworlder," the small insectoid had told him weeks earlier. That simple expression of gratitude now seemed to encompass everything Ulrich had accomplished since arriving at the academy. Not just survival, as on Nox 9, but something rarer and perhaps more valuable: transformation, of perceptions, of possibilities, of potential. Outside the gymnasium viewport, the stars of countless systems gleamed against the void, many harboring worlds that would be considered deadly by galactic standards. Worlds that produced beings like him, adapted for harsh conditions, evolved for survival against overwhelming odds. Deathworlders, once feared, perhaps now to be understood. As Ulrich watched his students, from the smallest like Finks to the largest like the newcomer, working together with growing confidence, he felt a sense of purpose that extended beyond the immediate moment. The Dawn Team selection had been his original goal, but this connection, this change, was something more significant. On Nox 9, the measure of success was survival. Here, among the stars, Ulrich had discovered a different metric: impact, not through force or fear, but through understanding and integration, not by denying his Deathworlder nature, but by showing how it could be an asset rather than a threat. The lesson would continue long after this training session ended. The path had been opened, not just for him, but for all who would follow.